This is Creepy and Geeky, a part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcast Network. Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and on today's episode, we're continuing my short vampire series with an episode on movies that became TV shows, specifically Buffy the Vampire Slayer and What We Do in the Shadows. Joining me for this episode is Angel Krause. Angel is the host of the Voices from the Mausoleum YouTube channel, where she talks about all kinds of horror stuff, including movies, books, and video games. Welcome back to the show, Angel.
Wow, thanks, Robert. I'm excited to talk about these with you. This was one of these was a first watch for me. You keep doing that to me. In a good way. I mean that in a good way.
Yeah. Good. I like to, hope that sometimes I'm introducing some stuff to people. So, and hopefully you enjoyed that one that I introduced to you. So we'll find out soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, both of these were movies that later on became TV shows. And I would say much more successful TV shows than their original source material. Because sometimes you get a movie that becomes a TV show and that TV show doesn't even last a whole season.
Right. Yeah.
So, because the movie is just so good and so iconic that you can't touch the movie by making it into an inferior TV show. But these two movies, for sure, definitely, the TV shows became so much better and more iconic in so many ways than the movies that spawned them. And I would argue that at least with What We Do in the Shadows, the original movie is still relevant and it's still funny and good in its own way.
Yeah.
And so, we'll get more into that in a minute, but we're going to go ahead and start off with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So part of having you on, I originally had another guest lined up for this. Unfortunately, they had to back out. And so luckily I was able to get you. You were my first choice after that. And I was like, okay, let me go get her because I know you're a huge fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV series.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was just like, okay, well, let's see if she likes the movie also. So, or at the very least, is willing to talk about it.
Yeah, I a fan of the series is such an understatement. I'm a massive Buffy fan. The show. It's something that I consider influential horror for me. I have there's so many parallels to Buffy's life. Obviously not the Slayer parts, but there's some other things going on that definitely. I know, right? No, I'm not revealing any major secrets. Sorry. But no, it was just these things where she had things going on in her life that always paralleled with mine so perfectly, and I'm just a huge fan. I have all 7 seasons on DVD, and I don't do physical media. I own both video games, both soundtracks. I have the cross necklace that Angel gives to her in the season 1, episode 1. I have the comics. I got Spike's autograph, the whole thing. So, and it actually, that was the start for Buffy for me. I didn't see the movie until much later. And it's funny we're talking about this today because I literally just started listening to the Audible original Slayers that just came out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I
heard
literally I just started. I got about, I think, not quite halfway, but almost halfway through it today. So yeah, I'm a massive Buffy fan, and I do really like the movie. The movie's very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's I saw the movie when it came out, not in theaters, but I saw it not too long after it came out, probably to video sometime around there, because it looked funny and it looked like it was up my alley. Everybody knows I'm a big horror comedy fan. So it fit really well into, that. And it's possible I might have seen this because this came out in 1992, which is the same year that Bram Stoker's Dracula came out.
Yep.
And so there was this mild resurgence in vampire stuff. Not that it had ever gone really away, because I mean, when you think about it, The Lost Boys was only 5 years earlier.
Right.
So,
It wasn't right. Exactly.
and the Lost Boys, as you and I talked about on the episode I did of my five influential horror on your podcast, on your YouTube channel,
Yeah.
was that that was one of my influential horror movies.
Hmm.
So anyway, and I talk about that in a previous episode as well. So it's but Buffy was a, I don't know, it's, I wouldn't say that I found it to be a favorite at all, but I did enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a while since I've watched it. And so
Hmm.
there was a lot that I really liked about it. It has this, it's so funny too, because the early 90s like this, it still had a little leftover 80s to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this movie felt firmly like it could have existed in the 80s. Um,
Yeah.
very easily. So it's just, you still have a lot of that fashion and the hairstyles and everything. The
Hmm.
90s aesthetic hadn't quite kicked in just yet. Um so but yeah. And I think that's kind of why early 90s horror for a lot of people doesn't feel quite right. Um
Yeah.
because it does feel like it's this like hangover from the 80s. So
Yeah. And people are really connected to 80s horror. 80s horror, I feel like, is like
yeah.
one of those things like, if you talk bad about it, then you're going to get jumped on the internet. Like 80s horror just has like, I feel like it's such a different level of fandom because I mean, you're usually talking about films that people grew up with. So it just hits different. So yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And I get it. Don't get me wrong. Like I grew up in the 80s. There's a lot of 80s horror films that I really enjoyed
Yeah.
during that time period. But I argue that the one thing that I will give the 80s for that I can see why people like it is there was a lot of originality and the
Yeah.
good and bad,
Hmm.
and there was the renaissance of the practical effects,
Yeah.
the fact that they were doing so much with practical at that time. And then
Hmm.
we kind of in the 90s, early to late 90s, we started getting into that digital effects, and things changed. So
Yeah.
I can kind of see why people are really like that time period, especially because it was the era of the video store, and so that's how a lot of people discovered that kind of stuff. um
Yeah. Yeah.
so
It's a
I
good
get it.
point.
I get it. But I
Yeah.
also am just like, dude, they're making really good horror movies now, like to
Yeah.
just like go, oh, I only like 80s horror, is just like, I don't know, you're missing out on quite a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You do see that too. A lot of people don't want to let go of that stuff. It'll never
right.
be. Well, it's not supposed to be. We don't want the same stuff. We want it to be different. So thank God it's not going to be. We don't want any more of those.
Exactly.
So yeah.
But yeah, no, I really like this movie. It's got a fun cast.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's got Christy Swanson's not a person I really want to hype up at all, but she's good in this movie.
Yeah. She's fine
Um
in this. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But really it's the surrounding cast for me.
Agreed.
Luke Perry does a good job in this, although he's he's still playing the heartthrob, so it's kind of hard to take him seriously as this like kind of grosser, like grease monkey kind of guy. It's kind of
He's
hard to
like,
take him
I'm
seriously
leaving
like that.
town. Yeah.
Yeah. And then but the highlight for me, and he's barely in the movie, but the highlight for me, of course, is David Arquette.
Oh
um
my God. Benny. Yeah.
and Benny is so funny. He's so good. And this is like his first movie. It's literally
Yes.
the first movie he's done. Or at
Yeah.
least it's one of the first movies. 1992 was like the year he got into movies.
Yeah.
And so it's,
Before he became Dewey.
yeah, only 4 short years later.
Just a few
So,
years. Yeah.
it's crazy when you think about it. But yeah, it's, I don't know. There's so many people in this movie. Like Hilary Swank is in this. I'm not a big Hilary Swank fan, but like it's her first movie role.
Yeah.
Um,
Donald
and it's
Sutherland is in it.
yeah, yeah,
Ben
which is funny
Affleck
that
has like a 2-second part,
Ben
which
Affleck is so funny.
I forgot. So okay, so I rewatched it to get ready for this conversation because it's been a while since I visited it. I know the show like literally the back of my hand, but the movie I hadn't seen in a long time, and I was like,
Right.
"Is this fucking Ben Affleck?" Forgot that he just has this like quick little moment as a basketball player at the school. I was like, "Wait, was it really who that was?" Like, it was so fast,
Yeah.
but that was crazy to me.
Well, and apparently Seth Green has a very short blink. You miss him. It's literally like a 3 second long.
Oh, I love Seth
Um,
Green so much. I missed it.
I know. I didn't see it. I didn't
Oh
see
my
it this
god,
time
and he's in the
either. I was looking for him.
show.
He's in the
That's
show. Yeah.
oh, that's
So,
odd. That's even crazier. Oh my god, I
yeah.
think if I can find the scene that he's in.
Yeah. It's you'll have to look it up and try to find it because I didn't find it. I didn't see
Oh my
exactly where it was supposed to be
god.
at.
I
But yeah,
completely missed
he's
that.
yeah. But apparently like 2 of the 3 seconds it's from the back of his head, so you can't really
Of
tell.
course.
And he's supposed to be one of the vampires at some point. But
Oh
then we
my
got
gosh.
Rucker Hauer as Lothos.
Yep.
We've got Paul Rubens as I
As
don't even remember the
oh my
name,
god.
but
Oh
is
sorry, go.
Lothos's sidekick.
His little yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, he's what makes the movie even more for me. Like he is completely vamping it up, huh, pun intended.
Yes.
Um, and he is just playing it exactly the right tone for the whole movie. Just every bit of it is perfect. Um,
Yeah.
so it just to me, he will always stand out as the best part of the movie. Um, just because he's
Yeah.
he's literally having so much fun.
Yeah,
So
he's great. And I think it's weird to see because outside of his usual like his what Pee-wee's Big Adventure and stuff like that, right?
yeah,
I don't know of like I don't think I've ever seen him in anything else. Like this was it. This was the only other thing. And that scene, and I know you already know where I'm going with this. That scene at the end when he dies for like 15 minutes, that's
oh,
hilarious. And I
it's
feel
so
like that
dumb.
could not be redone. That
No,
scene and the way that they kept going back to it, and he's like kicking the wall and like the whole nine. Like he was just like it took him forever to die. And
yeah,
I just think that like if they tried to do something like that now, it wouldn't be funny. It would be annoying.
yeah,
He
yeah.
is so
Well,
funny in this.
and it depends on the person too. Like, if you get somebody who's like that, you could totally see somebody doing that. But it was just so perfect for him to be doing it. And
Yeah.
this was like his first um major role after his unfortunate
The movie theater
arrest
thing.
in the
Yeah.
movie theater.
Yeah.
Which is funny though, because his whole goatee, mustache, and the hair look was taken from his mugshot because
Oh my
apparently he
God.
felt that he had never looked cooler than when he was in that mugshot. So whenever they were doing the
Wow.
makeup, he's like, "That's what I want to look like. I want to look like how I look like in my mugshot."
Oh my God. Well, all right.
So hey, I applaud him for just going with it and just like what, it happened. Everybody knows about it. I can't erase it. You know,
Might as
so
well embrace it.
might as well embrace it. So yeah, it's hilarious. But no, this movie's a lot of fun. It is kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
It feels like definitely. I know that you it was written by Joss Whedon,
Yep.
um, and it they then between the studio and the director, they changed quite a bit of it, and then he ended up walking off set.
Yeah.
After just a couple of weeks in because he was tired of them changing things. And then Donald Sutherland was apparently just ad libbing a whole bunch and
Yeah.
wasn't sticking to the script. But while watching this time, I didn't notice him. Like, I mean, maybe his ad libs were, you know, they made it work for the movie.
Yeah.
And so because it didn't seem like there was anything grossly out of norm. Um,
No, I think it
so
still goes all together. It's pretty cohesive in that
yeah.
respect, I think. Yeah. I mean, he got to go
So
back and do what he wanted to do when he did the show anyway. But it's funny, like, because watching it, because obviously, like, that's what I'm thinking about when I'm watching it. And it's so
right.
interesting to watch I will say that this setup I think is a little less creepy than the show. I mean, you've got a 15-year-old and a 200-year-old vampire, and anyway, I won't go down the rabbit hole. But aside from that part, it's like, but there was I noticed there's like a lot of these cute little things that were in the movie that definitely were still used at the start of the show, as far as like
Right.
the things that were important to Buffy, and like she's like, I can't miss cheerleading. Like there's an entire episode in the show about her wanting to do cheerleading again because she doesn't want to give it up for Vampire Slate. Like there's a lot of those little moments where you're like, okay, so this is like he definitely drew from this when he did the first season of the show, because
Right.
there's so many similarities. You've got the master from the show is Lothos and is in the movie, and so it's
Right.
it's all these things. The dress that she wears to the dance is almost identical to the dress that Sarah Michelle Gellar wears, which I may or may not have had a version of. Anyway, and so it's just one of I'm such a massive fan. It's just one of those things where it was kind of neat to see, like, okay, so like obviously there were still a lot of those pieces that were then still used for the show that made me kind of
Right.
appreciate it a little bit more than I probably did the first time I watched it. Um,
Right.
because first time I went into it was when I was like peak Buffy. Like Buffy wasn't even canceled yet. And so it was like the first time I ever saw it, it was like it will never be, you know what I mean? And so going into it now, I just feel like I was able to get in, just enjoy the silliness that it was, the
Right.
ridiculous banter between the girls. And also I will say, as over the top as the teenage girls were in this, that was also super realistic. When she's like loving that yellow jacket, but she's not going to get it because her friend's like, no, it's ugly, don't get it, it's over. And then she goes and gets it. Like that's things that happen in the girl world, you know? And so I
Right.
was like, that bitch, like it was just relatable. Like that stuff was like, oh, I remember stuff like that, anyway. So it's just like they seem so over the top. It's like someone in my 30s. But like really it was
Right.
actually pretty realistic in that regard. So it's a really fun movie. I definitely would revisit it again. And I mean, if people haven't seen it, I think they should. I think it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. No, I think so too. I think that, if you haven't seen the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, it's worth a watch. Yeah, even if it's just once, it's still worth a watch. It's a fun movie. It
Yeah.
doesn't take itself seriously. And
No.
especially if you do like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the, the Buffy series,
Yeah.
that I think that it does have moments in it that are referenced in part, because Buffy does mention that she had a former watcher, and that she
Yep.
had that there was a fire at her school, which
At
was
the
part of the
school.
original. Yeah, it was part of the original script, was that there was the movie was supposed to end with a fire. She was supposed to set the gym on fire, so that she could kill the vampires or whatever that were inside.
Right.
And so that's referenced in the TV show. So he was going back to his original story that they
Yeah.
did end up doing in a comic book series. They did end up telling
Yeah.
that story in a comic book series.
Yeah.
So, and so it
Even
does have some parallels to him.
the principal in this reminded me so much of Principal Flutie from the first season of Buffy. He was like so cute and like naive, like, and he's like like in the movie he's telling the story about these times that he like got high and then started freaking out, and you're just like, it's definitely Principal Flutie. Like he was just so, and she's not paying attention at all. She's like, oh, why am I even in here? But I just think it's so funny to see some of those character parallels between the movie and then the show.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, because I haven't watched the show in a very long time.
Yeah.
Um, I did enjoy it. I came to it kind of late. I came into it around the third season.
Okay.
Um, and then I fell in love with it. And then eventually I
Yeah.
did see the first two seasons. And I caught up to it. But I fell off towards the end. Probably the last season or two, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of fell off. And it was the same with the spinoff Angel. Um, I liked Angel.
I
Not the
hated Angel.
care,
He's like my
not
least
the
favorite everything. My
no,
least
I
favorite
didn't like the
character.
character. I
Okay,
didn't
you mean
like
the
the
show?
character. I meant the show. Yeah,
I
yeah.
couldn't
The
watch it because I
show was
hate the
interesting.
character.
Yeah, the show was interesting because it had Cordelia was in there, and they had what's his name? The other watcher.
Wesley.
Wesley. Wesley was in there, and they had Fred, and so
I
there were
hated
so
him
there
too. I did like Fred.
So they did have some other good characters in there that I enjoyed. So that
Yeah.
was why I watched that show. But again,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
both of those I kind of fell off by the end of the series. So I don't even remember. Um, I don't remember how Angel ended. I remember Buffy because I kind of came back towards the very end just to watch a little bit. But by that time, I was like so confused. I was like, "Wait, why are there so many new Slayers?
Oh,
What's
I
going on?"
know. It
Um,
and it's crazy because it like dropped in ratings, which is one of the reasons I think they ultimately decided to end the show. And then
yeah.
season 7, people really liked it, and it was like too late. Like the ratings for it like went really like people were really into. I will tell you this, and I'm not exaggerating. I went into like a 3 month long depression when the show was over. Like I
Oh,
was so upset. I literally like I was still in high school when it ended, and I no. Yes, I was still in high school when it ended. And I literally left.
boy.
I walked. Oh. I walked out
I
of
was an adult. I was 18 when the movie came
well,
out. So,
well, I was
yeah.
still in high school when it went off, but I like literally walked out of my room after I watched the series finale, and I just went on the couch and just laid on my dad and I just cried. Like I was so invested in this show, and so it's I didn't watch Angel. I did watch the 5th season of Angel when they brought in Spike because he
Yeah.
guys in the series, but well, sort of. So, but other than that, I just couldn't get into Angel. It just seemed a little too silly. It was more silly than Buffy to me, and I know, right? And I just couldn't get it. I just couldn't do it. I was like, no. Oh, I did like the green guy, Lorne. I did like
Oh,
him. He was
Lauren.
pretty
Yeah.
funny. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just couldn't get into it as much as I did the
Yeah.
Buffy. But and then the Slayers thing is like really wild. But
Yeah.
anyway,
No,
yeah,
but I mean, getting back to the movie and everything like that, the movie was definitely like, I'm sure his original script was probably more serious. It was more of
probably, yeah,
the snarky jokes rather than the more broad comedy that the movie actually became. Um,
yeah,
but I really enjoy um how just silly overall the movie was. It was just it's like it's just fun. It doesn't take much brain power to watch.
no,
You can
no.
just sit back, enjoy it, and just be silly and just go, oh, hey, David Arquette, oh, Ben Affleck, all these
I know,
people who
yeah.
are in it that you recognize now from
Yeah,
other things when they were so young. Um, so it's just a lot of fun in
it
general.
is. Yeah, no,
Um,
I really liked it. I don't I think
yeah,
it's not one if it's somebody's listening and they haven't watched it and they decide to go watch it, it's not one to go into like expecting anything serious. I think if you do, you're gonna end up hating it and being really disappointed.
right. And
Because it's
don't
really
compare it to the TV show either, because
don't. No,
two totally separate things.
no, and they're completely different energies. Like the only
Yeah,
thing that I had fun was noticing the similarities, but that came from a very open-minded
right.
place. I wasn't comparing it, step for step because they are nothing
Exactly.
alike in that regard.
Yeah.
But this one, I really liked it. And like I found myself when I was watching it, like rewatching it recently for this, it's like I even like found myself like getting back into like the Buffy Pike relationship and like caring about that, which is ridiculous. But I did. I was like, oh my God, they're so cute. Please, please end up together, knowing I know how it is. Anyway, but it was one of those things where it's just like I got like back into the drama parts of it. And I'm like, when she's like arguing with her friends in the gym, I'm like, tell them to go fuck themselves. Like, you got more important stuff to do, Buffy. Don't let them talk to you like that, like that kind of thing.
Right.
I got really invested because it is a drama. It's like a comedy horror drama, and I just really liked it a lot. It's a very fun movie to just like you said, just turn your brain
Yeah.
off, just watch it and enjoy
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's it's I would take it as like this alternate reality version of Buffy. And just,
it.
just
Yeah.
and exactly keep it in the time and place that it exists.
Yes.
And so that,
Agreed.
being early 90s goofy horror.
Yeah.
Um, but it's so much fun and so like just it's just very light. And
Yeah.
so that it just I don't know. um
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
it's hard to talk about it because it's really it's there's not a lot of meat there. But just
Yeah.
in the context of, what it spawned. And that's what I think is interesting about it, is that the movie didn't do spectacularly well. Um, I don't remember it doing well enough that they were just like, okay, yeah, let's do more of this. Obviously not, because they were just like, okay, well, a few years later, they finally let him make this TV show version and a
Right.
more faithful version of what he wanted to do in the first place.
Hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
it's interesting that second chances and all that you get a chance to do something more fun and interesting in a lot of ways, and finally get to expand out what that idea was.
I mean,
So
yeah, you're talking about Buffy had 7 seasons, Angel had 5.
yeah.
They've talked about
And
redoing it numerous times, but they haven't. And then now they've even got this random like Audible original thing.
yeah.
It's crazy how much it did expand, to your point, from the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and like all the
Mhm.
comic books that followed later, because they
Oh
did,
yes, and the
you know
comics. Yep.
yeah, they did more seasons in comic books. They did season 8 to what, 11
Yes,
or
that's right.
12.
They went on after
um
7. Yep.
yeah. So as official as that gets, so
Sure. Yeah, right.
so
Yeah. I
but
don't even think they've acknowledged any of that in the Slayer series. So far it's just
probably
been
not.
after the whole happens, fast forward. Like that's been about the extent of it. But yeah, they continue to do stuff with it. I mean, I think in the world of vampires, especially when you're talking about something like this, where there's Slayer and you add all these magic, I mean, there's really just so much you can do with it. So
Yeah.
yeah. And I like that there is a version of it, like the movie, that is, like you said, it's a more light take on the situation. It's just like,
Right.
because in reality, that would be awful. But like the way that this is staged and set up, it's just funny, and yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah. I think it's, and it's interesting that, a lot of that building blocks were, created, in this movie. You've got the history of the Slayers and the Watchers, in this,
Yep.
although, each one of the Slayers is just, Christy Swanson just in period
A different
dress.
wig.
So it's always like, yeah.
And a different time, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting and funny, the way they do it. There's an aspect of the movie that they didn't carry over into the series, which was like she has an early warning device, like a Buffy sense, but it's like she gets
Oh yeah.
period cramps
She's like,
when
oh
when a
great,
vampire's
my
there.
Buffy, yeah, she's like, oh great, my Slayer intuition is PMS. Awesome. Like,
Yeah. Which looking back on it is just like, oh, that's just not a good thing. That was just should
yeah,
have been a
works
red
that
flag right there.
that wasn't something that got elaborated on later.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
thankfully that did not get added into the series.
Yeah, no Slayer
Um
PMS, no,
yeah.
none
So
of that.
weird. Um but yeah, no, this movie's interesting. It holds to a lot of the familiar tropes of vampires as well. You've got they can't come in unless they're invited. And the great scene when Benny is floating outside Pike's window, and he wants to be let in, and Pike's just like, man, you're floating,
Oh my
so
God, so nonchalant. That's definitely like a take from was it Salem's Lot, the window scene
yeah,
from
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, and he's like, "Come on." He's like, "What's wrong with you?" And he's like, nothing." Nothing.
yeah,
No thanks. Yeah, that part was funny.
yeah.
Benny was great. And he's not even in it that much, but he's great.
Yeah, exactly. He's barely in it. And apparently, okay, so Thomas Jane is in the movie as well.
What?
Yeah, he is the guy who runs the mechanic shop that Pike is at.
You know
But you
what?
but
I
you don't notice
thought
him because he's got the beard and
I thought
goatee.
he
I
looked
didn't realize it
familiar,
was
but
him either.
I couldn't place it. Also, I Googled it, and Seth Green has glasses in the movie, and he's one of the guys that jumps on the boyfriend. He's one of the vampires that jumps on the boyfriend when they get attacked later. It's like later in the movie.
Okay. All right.
I
Yeah,
just, but you wouldn't
I'll have to
recognize.
check
There's
that out
no
again.
way you would see that scene and be like, "Oh, that's Seth Green." Like, there's no way,
Right.
no
Yeah,
way.
because I mean, it's 92, so it's like I'd have to
He's
see what other
little.
movies. Well, no, it'd be 92 would have been like a year after he would have been in It. So yeah, he's
Yeah,
still
and that was before Can't Hardly Wait, so he was definitely little or
way
young.
before Can't Hardly Wait. Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
would have been
Yeah.
yeah,
Because what Can't Hardly Wait was what, 97?
yeah, late '90s. Yeah,
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I
He
love
would have
that
been right
movie.
around the time he would have been on Buffy, or shortly before he was on Buffy.
Oh, yeah,
So
he's one of my favorite Buffy characters.
mine too. Yeah, I was because I came into it in season 3 and he was still there. But
Oh
he
yeah.
left not too
Oh,
long afterward, and so I was really disappointed because I've always liked Seth Green,
yeah,
and
he's
so I
great.
was real disappointed that I was like, oh man, he's barely on the show.
And
So
they did that annoying thing with him and Riley, which are two of my favorite characters. I don't care what anybody says about Riley, by the way. You can be mad all you want, but he's my favorite. But they do this weird thing where they're like, okay, like y'all are breaking up, it didn't work, you're going to do different things. And they were just gonna like bring you back for one episode to piss everyone off. And I'm like, why? They did it with both of them. They did it with Oz. Oz comes back after Willow's already met Tara, and that was like super awkward and not fun. Although we do get that really great scene where she comes out to Buffy, which I thought was really cool. But it's just like they did that with Riley too, and I was like, stop doing that. Like, break up. If you're gonna get rid of them, stop playing with our emotions. Make a decision, stick with it. Yeah.
uh,
Anyway, so yeah.
yeah, so it's yeah, it's what was I saying? Um, but yeah, this movie's just got so many fun people in it. It's so like such a fun um like story. Rucker Hauer's good in it. We haven't really talked about him too much. He's good in it, but again, he's kind of barely in it. Um, and he doesn't come off super menacing to me. He doesn't seem like he's really that
God,
dangerous.
no, no,
Um,
not at all.
and so it's just I don't know. Everything about the movie just screams silly. Um, like, and in a way that it works. Don't get me wrong. But it's definitely not a scary movie. It's definitely not anything that
No,
makes you like there's never any good jump scares or anything like that.
no,
So but it's
no,
just
it's nothing
fun.
like
It's
that.
just a fun movie to watch. When you got some time. It's like an hour and 25 minutes. It's not long.
Mm-mm.
So
And it's on Max right now, so you can watch it on
oh,
Max.
there you go. Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
I I have it on digital already, so I didn't
Of course you
need
do.
to hunt it down. I don't even know how I got it. I've been on my Voodoo for a long time. I'm sure I bought it when it was on sale sometime. So
Mm-hmm.
uh but which was unfortunate because I thought I still had a copy of What We Do in the Shadows. I had that on Blu-ray, but I think I sold it recently because I was gonna get it on Voodoo. Because
Oh no.
the copy I had didn't have any extras. There's like two versions on Blu-ray out there. There's one with extras and one without extras. And so I thought the one I was getting had the extras on it, but nope. Um, and so I was just like, well, if I'm gonna have it, I'm just gonna get it on digital anyway and save the room.
Yeah.
And then didn't buy it on digital anytime lately. So and it's like $15 right now. So I was like, no, I'm just gonna rent it. Um, so that's what I did this time. I rented that. So, but yeah, it's I don't have much else to say about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's a
No.
lot of fun. It's goofy. It's
Yeah.
silly.
Yep.
Definitely seek it out if you like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show, and you want a little
Agreed.
extra vampire stuff that if you haven't already seen it. And
Yeah.
if you have seen it, let me know. Do you like it?
Yeah. Always
Um,
more to hear about people's opinions on any type of Buffy anything.
all right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's go ahead and talk about What We Do in the Shadows. If
Mm-hmm.
you've seen the TV series is a mockumentary style, kind of like The Office, where there's this group of vampires living in this house, and there's this documentary crew. weirdly following them for whatever reason. Well, the movie's exactly the same way. And is it was written and directed by Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi. And they both star in the movie as well as two of the four main vampire characters that are in there. Really three, since Peter isn't in there very long.
Right.
But this was a first for you, you said, right?
Yeah, and I haven't watched the show yet.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, so I
So
watched this literally today. My partner and I watched it. We both took the day off and hung out and spent some time. So I was like, we have to watch this because I haven't watched it and I got to talk about it today. I was like, I gotta watch it. And like, yeah, so we watched it today. So it was a first watch for me.
all right. And what did you think?
I really loved it. I thought it was so funny. We both loved it. Like I actually like right before we sat down to record, she texted me and was like, I think that's gonna be my new favorite movie. Because we rented it. It was like $2.99.
Yeah.
Or it
Yeah.
had the option to buy it for I think $5.99. And she at the end of the movie she was like, I can't believe we didn't just buy it. And I was like, well, I mean, we didn't know if we were gonna like it or not. Because she's a huge fan of the show and
Oh, okay.
of the series. And so I was like, okay, well, well, I gotta watch this. I want to watch this first anyway, and then we can do the series. She can rewatch it and I can watch it for the first time. But no, I loved it. I thought it was so funny. It kind of okay, so there is a movie that came out in 2010, so just like 5 years before this, called Vampires, and it's the same thing, but it's not funny. It's like it's the same setup. These documentary filmmakers are given safety, promised safety and security if they want to come film this
Yeah.
small section of these Belgium vampires. And that's exactly what they do, except it's a family, not friends. But anyway, I bring that up to say I was like, oh, like this premise seems really familiar. And then that was why it's because I watched that for Found Footage Month like a couple of years ago. And so, but anyway, it came out in 2010. So I was already used to the format. I thought this was hilarious. It was really
That's
funny.
funny.
I love the loads of vampire stuff that's going on in this. The callbacks to Lost Boys and Nosferatu, and obviously like Vlad the Impaler, and like all of so many things, so many
Right.
references. And we laughed, I mean, from start to finish. It was so funny.
No, it's hilarious. Like
Yeah.
if anybody likes the TV show, this is where it all starts from. This like the TV show is set in New York with a group of vampires that lives there.
Yeah.
And whereas this one's set in New Zealand, because that's where the guys that Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi and all their
Yeah.
friends are from.
Yeah.
And so they do actually come back in the TV show as well. I think Taika Waititi does, at least. But because they have this big, in the first season, there's this big vampire council thing, and not only do they come back, but they actually get guests. They actually have other people on the vampire council that were in other vampire movies, and
Oh my
Paul Rubens from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Stop it.
Yes, he's in it.
Oh
See,
my
so you
God.
have to watch the TV series now.
I can't wait to watch it. I think I'm gonna love. I mean, if it's anything like the movie, which sounds like it is, I'm gonna love it.
It's even better. Like, I think that what they did in the movie is great. And I like Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement, but I think the cast in the TV show is just even better. And one of the main characters is a woman as well, so that helps kind of balance it out.
So many clips, yeah.
So, and one of the other characters, so they've got the main three vampires in the TV show, and then there's a fourth one that also shares the house with them, but he's an energy vampire, and so he's just really boring and just like sucks the energy out of everybody. So so it's really funny. And then they've got their familiar who is also in there, one of the vampires that's a familiar that lives with them, and that's played by Harvey. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Guillen, I think. He was in Werewolves Within. He was.
Who did he play in that?
He was
he's the husband.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Okay, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
So he so he was in that, and yeah, so he's a main character. He's a main character in the show as well. So yeah, you'll I think you'll really like it. If you like the movie, you're gonna love the TV show even more because it's even funnier. So
Okay. I'm looking forward to starting it. I think I'm probably gonna eat it. I love the movie. The movie was a lot of fun.
yeah, no, and that and it's funny too because like I think I had heard the movie or the TV series was coming out, and I'd heard people talking about the movie. And I was like, okay, it seems like a funny thing. I'll have to check it out. And I think what I think part of it was also that Cavity Colors was putting out a T-shirt um
Hmm.
for the movie.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh well, that plus people had been talking about it for a while because the movie came out in 2014, and
Yeah.
right around the time I was getting into horror was like heavier into horror was in 2018. So it's been a few
Right.
years afterward. So I was trying to catch up with stuff. So finally I was just like, okay, I gotta watch this movie and see how funny it is. And but yeah, it's super hilarious. It just this documentary crew is just goes about these guys, lives as vampires. And it's just hilarious because they're just normal guys really with just the added bit of being a vampire.
Oh
So
my God. Yeah. I
and
think I think what makes the humor work so well though is like the different relationship dynamics between everybody, like the friend group being like the main three with of course the Nosferatu and Peter, like is
yeah,
not like super present as far as that goes, not like sitting around chatting it up like the rest of them. And so
right.
like when they have their flat meeting, he's like Peter's like 800 and some 800. He's not coming to our flat meeting.
Yeah.
And I think, but their dynamics are so fun. And then you introduce, Nick and like get the weird jealousy with him coming in and then his friends. Like it's all of these like social interaction pieces are what make this so funny because it's like
Right.
and like when they just from the introductions, like when Nick turns into a vampire after he's turned and he's like trying to get into the window and they're like, why don't you just use the front door? And he's like, because I can fly. But he can't get in the window. Like he's like
Right.
trying to maneuver his body and he can't get in the window. So they're all just like stopping what they're doing to stare at him. And it's
Yeah.
just, but it's like that. And then their reactions to those moments, it's like, it's just very well timed and planned. It's very fun.
And a lot of that was actually improvised. So they
Oh, cool. Okay.
yeah, Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi had written a script, but they didn't show it to anybody else. So they just plotted it out. They just said, okay, well, we're going to do this. This is what we're doing today. And then just kind of everybody made up stuff as they went along.
Well, it
So,
worked. That's some intense
yeah,
chemistry on set then for that all to fall together the way that it did because it's
right.
hilarious. And like the Vlad character is like one of my favorites. Like when he shows up, like one of the things that I think one of the things I thought was so funny because they have not addressed the filmmakers really. They introduce them at the beginning and then they don't really bring them up that often until
Right.
the end when they're at that party or towards the end rather when they're at the party and they're like and he's like you can't have Stu or the cameraman, well maybe one cameraman.
Yeah.
Like but before that they haven't like brought them up like they haven't talked about them until they're like well I guess we have to eat somebody, it can be one of the cameramen. Like
Right.
they're I don't know, this is so funny. It's probably going to end up being a regular watch for us because I'm like it was so fun. And I honestly I did, first of all I didn't know there was a movie for the longest.
Yeah.
And I really only put off the show because it's a show. Shows are like a time suck. It's really hard for me to commit to them, which I think we've talked
Yeah.
about with other things before, but it's like they're really difficult. So I kept putting it off. And then I started seeing there was a movie and I was like, oh, okay. And then you asked about doing if I was available to do this. And I was like, oh, I gotta watch the movie. I was like, that's a good reason to start. Because I've been wanting to watch the show, but I need to watch the movie first. It came out for like a weird, like, but anyway, so it was really fun. Like it was so fun. We laughed from start to finish. I thought it was great.
Well, the good thing about the show is it's like under a half hour. So,
Quick little,
yeah. And there's only
yeah.
10 episodes per season. So it's like
And there's three
literally
seasons waiting on a fourth.
no, there's there's 5 seasons so
There's
far.
five, and then
Yeah.
okay, Okay.
I think they probably, I don't know if they've gotten renewed for a sixth, but I would imagine that they probably did.
Yeah, they seem to have
Um,
quite the following.
oh yeah, no, it's the show is huge. Um, it's just it's crazy how big the show became. Um,
I wonder if they expected that, given that, because you said that. So I don't know what happened for the movie when it came out. I mean, like I said, I didn't even know it existed until not that long ago.
well, the movie itself did not get an American release until
Oh,
a
okay.
while afterward because nobody would pick it up. And so they ended up doing a Kickstarter to get it released over here.
I
Um,
gotcha.
so
Okay.
so yeah, so it took a while for sure. But I think that's partially why by the time I started getting into horror, people were still talking about it. Because it's
Makes sense.
still one of those things that people didn't the people were still trying to figure out or like still discovering themselves. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
but yeah. Um, but yeah, it's the again, this is a case where the movie is great, but the show is even better. But
Yeah.
and this is different from at least with the Buffy thing, where the show is very much exactly the same as the movie. And they just kind of carried over the concept of different characters. And those
Right.
characters from the original movie still exist in that world. Like I said, Taika Waititi's character shows up in the show.
Mm-hmm.
So it does make it a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, this movie is just it's so um just it's mockumentary kind of exists in that found footage ish
Mm-hmm.
area.
Yeah.
So I thought that that would help this along with you too, because I know you're not a big fan of horror comedies. So, but again, we talked about this last time that as long as you know going into it,
It's
then
usually a better
it
take.
makes it,
Yeah.
yeah,
I usually don't feel so annoyed by it because it's just hard to break the like tone expectation. It's one thing to go
right,
into a movie like that you really want to see and you have like an expectation it doesn't meet it because it just didn't do, I don't know, what do you want it to do? But it's different when you're going in expecting one tone and you go and you have something totally, it's so hard to
right,
like to transition over to that mentality. So yeah, but this one, yeah, it totally helped because I was ready to laugh. Like I went into it ready to laugh, versus
yeah,
being okay, this can be like a super serious vampire movie, and then it's like, why are they being funny? So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, this is what was this 2014. So I mean, this is before Taika Waititi obviously became mega huge with Thor and everything. So it's
Hmm.
but you can see the humors there already that he brought into Thor
Yeah.
Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, it's I'm trying to think of moments. Oh, I think it's hilarious too that the Nick character because he gets he's being he's brought there to be food for the vampires by
Yeah.
the one vampire's familiar. So one of the vampires has a woman as a as familiar. He's been promising to make her a vampire. And everybody who watches the show understands the same concept that carries over into there. But
Yeah.
she's been promised to be made into a vampire, but he just keeps putting her off. And so then she's told, "Oh, bring some humans to this dinner party." And so Nick is one of the two, and he um, uh, tries to escape and run away, and ends up
Hmm.
getting tackled by Peter. And
Yep.
you think he's dead for a little while, but then all of a sudden he shows back up, and he's a vampire
Two
now.
months later.
2 months later, that's right. 2 months later, he shows back up, and he's a vampire now. And he can't stop telling people he's a vampire.
He's such a millennial vampire. Like
Yeah,
that's what it is. He's like literally, and
yeah,
there, yeah, he no sense of secrecy. He's like, oh yeah, I told them, and he's like, well, who is that? He's like, I don't know, but I trust him.
yeah. And he just keeps yelling out Twilight.
Oh my god, the Twilight bits made me laugh so hard. Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh, it's so funny.
He's
It's like if that's your
hilarious.
frame of reference for vampires,
Oh
man,
my God, right?
you need a better education.
It was
Like
so, and
I'm not gonna shit on Twilight. I know it's got a lot of fans and everything like that. It's not my jam, but if it's your
yeah,
jam, enjoy. Hopefully you came and came into the world of horror through that and then found some other cool shit. So
yeah.
that's all I wanna that's all I hope. Um but yeah, it's but yeah, he can't stop telling people and then it bites them in the butt
It
a little bit.
does.
So I won't spoil that bit. Normally I'm okay with spoiling things, but that's a good bit to not spoil.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but then he brings his friend Stu in,
I love
and
Stu's character so
the
much.
hilarious thing about Stu was Stu just happened to be a friend of theirs. Um, and he'd kind of done a little minor acting with them, and he was only supposed to be in the movie a little bit. And then ends up having this much bigger part. And that's why I think makes him so funny is because he just looks like he's uncomfortable the whole time.
Like he doesn't belong. Yeah.
Yeah. And but the vampires love him. They love Stu. They're just like, yeah, we don't care. We don't like Nick,
Stu's great. Yeah.
Yeah. At one point they actually kicked Nick out of the house and they're just like, Stu, you're welcome anytime.
Yeah.
So it just makes everything so much more funny. Um, just that every bit of it. And it's great to see this kind of um goofy little dynamic, taking that kind of mockumentary office style setup um and extrapolating it out into something like this
Yeah.
um that just works because that doesn't always work well. Um and it just worked
No.
really well with this and the TV show. And like I said, it works even better with the TV show. So
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I really loved this. I thought it was hilarious. The commentary on like some of the things about being like even like not showing up in mirrors. They're like, oh, it's a floating orange or whatever. Like there's just like these are things that like sometimes you think about when you're reading or watching things related to vampires, but you never like
right,
see it. So it's just really funny to like see all those thoughts of like how silly some of that stuff is and it being like
right,
discussed openly in like a supposed real world situation. And yeah, it's
right.
got me really excited to do the show. I'm really excited to check out the show. The movie was definitely a hit.
Awesome. Yay.
Definite.
Um yeah, and I do think it's funny because you mentioned the mirror bit. I think it's funny that they also but they do show up on film.
I
Like they
I
take
thought this.
pictures of themselves constantly and
Yes.
they show up. So it's funny that they don't show up in the mirror. So
Yeah, because it's usually both.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't
I,
have
I
one
thought about
without the
that too,
other.
actually, when they were doing their little photo montage. I thought about that. It's like, wait, what?
And then
Yeah.
Stu shows them how to like do their pictures, put their pictures online and stuff. It's so funny.
And do
Everything is
video
just
calls. Oh my God.
yeah.
So
Oh my
funny.
god. It's just so many things about this movie were just hilarious. Like I can't remember the one vampire's name, but it's the one that's the one that's young and kind of the upstart one they say, but he's still like over 100 years old and he's
Deacon, right?
Deacon, yes.
Yeah.
Deacon is so funny too because he's like, yeah, I was a Nazi vampire. And it was
Oh
just
my
like,
God. The face he makes when he's like, and if, after the war, he's like, the Nazis lost the war. I don't know if you know that, but the Nazis lost the war. And he's like, and if after the war, if you were a Nazi, and he makes this face like, it
yeah. And if you were a Nazi vampire,
was like, oh,
so funny.
oh
It's
God, that was
just
probably way funnier than it should have been. But his facial expression during that one part was
yeah.
like, oh, and I also love that whenever, oh my God, what's the main one? The one that starts with the story.
Um, oh man.
Deacon, Vlad, and Peter. What's the other one? The main one. Oh my God.
Um, he's the one played by Taika Waititi.
Yes,
Let me
that one.
see.
I can't think of his
Viego.
name. Yeah, yeah, Diego. So
Yeah.
Diego's like can't not hit the main artery. So like
Yeah.
there's two instances where he's trying to pee And he just makes an absolute mess of it. And this the second time it happens, I lost it. I was like,
Yeah.
he's like, they finally get into that like club or whatever, and I'm like, please don't bite anybody here. Like,
Yeah.
handle it. Oh my god, it's so dumb. It's the like those little things. I don't know. It's so funny.
Yeah. And
Oh my god.
Vlad, it was Vlad the poker.
Oh my god.
Instead of
Yes.
Vlad the Impaler.
And then he was like, when Stu was teaching them social media, he tells them, he's like, yeah, or on Facebook, you can poke them. And he just looks at him like,
He's like, I can poke people.
oh my God.
It's
So
so funny.
yeah, that one was a really good time. I'm
Yeah.
glad I watched it. It was so good.
Good. I there's also the werewolves in this, led
Oh,
by
yes.
Reese Darby, who's now on Our Flag Means Death, along with Taika Waititi. So they they're both in this movie, but Reese Darby plays the leader of this pack of
Oh, he's the
werewolves that
boss
they come
from Yes
across.
Man.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how I knew him, Norm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute. That's that guy that has that Harry Potter party. I remember him.
Yes. Oh, it's been so long since I've seen that. That's so
I love
funny.
that movie. I know that one pretty
Uh,
good too. But yeah, but anyway, yeah,
yeah,
he's the
and he's
leader of
also in the Jumanji, the last two Jumanji movies with The Rock and
Oh,
Kevin
okay.
Hart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so he pops up in lots of different things, but he's most recently been on Our Flag Means Death on Max. It's that gay pirate show.
I don't know
That
that one.
everybody enjoys. Oh, it's really good. The first season is really good. That's all I've seen so far. I haven't caught up with the second season yet, although I'm hearing very negative
Uh-oh.
reactions to the I guess the season finale. Not in ways that like the like I'm hearing that people are dissatisfied with what happened in the episode,
Yeah.
to one of the characters, and I don't know anything about it other than I've been trying to keep relatively spoiler free on that. So, but
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's a good show. If you ever do get to watching it,
Yeah.
Reese Darby plays the main character. He plays a pirate, a gentleman pirate named Stede Bonnet. And he meets and ends up having a romance with Blackbeard, played by Taika Waititi. So
Okay. Huh.
yeah, it's an interesting, and it's based in as much fact as they can make it. So because Stede Bonnet
Huh.
was an actual pirate that worked with Blackbeard for a short bit. So, but yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, no, the werewolves in this are hilarious. They're werewolves, not swearwolves.
I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt. I'm not even joking. I said as soon as that line happened, I looked at my partner, I was like, I'm putting that on a t-shirt. I'm putting it on a t-shirt. He's like, why are you swearing so much? Well, it's the full moon. It gets me riled up.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's great. And then there's a bit with Stu at the end. We'll leave that to people to
Oh yeah.
discover for themselves as well.
Yeah.
But they have been they have teased a sequel to this movie called We're Wolves.
Oh, okay.
But it's been in the what if stage for like a
The
long
rumor
time.
mill.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, they've talked about doing it, but it's one of those things where they talk about doing it but never do it because they're busy doing other things. So
Yeah. That makes sense.
so it may be somewhere down the road they'll get to it.
Yeah, right.
But,
Yeah. Especially with
yeah.
the show's popularity. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you get piggyback off of that.
Yeah. And it did have another spinoff, not just the show, but there's the two cops in this movie. They got their own spinoff as well called Wellington Paranormal. So, and that one's
I'll have
actually
to look into that.
still set. Yeah. I believe that one is also on Max. So
Okay.
check that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, this this movie's a lot of fun. If you
Yeah.
like the TV show, definitely check out the movie, and I'm sure people already have. Maybe people didn't know it was actually based on a movie. So but if you didn't know, now you do. Go check it out. It's not streaming anywhere for free, so you will have to rent it. Um,
Yeah. It's so worth it
unfortunately,
though. Just
yeah,
buy it. It's $5.99. You'll watch it again, promise. Like just
yeah,
buy it.
definitely.
$3 or $6. Just buy it. It's worth it.
All right, where did you buy it from? On Amazon?
Yeah, that sounds right. I think it came up on
Okay,
Amazon. I think that's
okay,
right.
yeah. I tend to buy my stuff on Vudu, and it was $15 on Vudu, so I wasn't buying it.
Oh,
So
it's $5 on Prime.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, because it was 2.9. Yeah, I think 2.99 to rent or 5.99 to buy.
Okay,
I think that's right.
gotcha.
Actually. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all I have to say about both of these. Just I had a lot of fun rewatching these.
Yeah.
And comparing them to the TV series that came afterward. I can't wait to hear how you how much you enjoy the TV series as well, because I know
I'm
you
sure I'll
will.
be posting
So,
about it like nonstop.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
Yeah, so I'm on everything. So if you look for Voices from the Mausoleum, you'll probably find me. YouTube is Voices from the Mausoleum, so is my Instagram. From Mausoleum is my Blue Sky and my Twitter. And I think TikTok is from Mausoleum as well, or maybe Voices FTM, but I also have a website, which is voicesftm.com. But yeah, if you search Voices from the Mausoleum, something's bound to come up. Yeah, I'm on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming back on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. This was
Always a
fun.
good.
I'm glad I watched this other
Yeah.
movie. I'm excited to see the show now. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll be excited to hear what you have to say about
I'm sure it'll be good. All good things.
it. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again to Angel for joining me. On Friday, Hugh McStay returns to the show to talk about Avengers Endgame, and on Monday, Violet Hammond returns to conclude my vampire series with Bram Stoker's Dracula and Interview with the Vampire.